So I was just wondering, how many times do you think I generate content out of thin air? Like, it's something that just popped up in my head and I was like, you know what, I'm going to talk about it. Like, a lot of times people would think that, it's something that happens a lot, or it's something that I do on a regular, or I never do it at all because most of my content is based off of content that I've pulled from somewhere, somehow, or a discussion somewhere. But to be very honest, this rarely actually happens. Like, most times my content is going to come from some discussion or from something that I've seen on the internet or from some piece of information that I learned somewhere. Like, it's always going to have some sort of a source. And rarely do I ever just pull content like out of thin air. Up until now. Which is why I feel like this episode is a little bit special to me. Also, considering that I am about to do one of the most obnoxious and possibly you could call it arrogant or full of hubris type things. And, name a couple of things after myself. Because I figured, why the hell not? It's not something that's really being discussed. Now, I've been doing this podcast for the better part of 5 years. And honestly, there's a lot that I've learned from all of these years busy discussing relationships mainly. Like, I've discussed a lot of other things. I've gone into society and culture. I've discussed maybe a little bit of gossip and can I call it fiction? Okay, dilemmas maybe, but relationships mainly. Like, even besides sex, relationships on their own, I've discussed them so much. And the one topic that I've discussed way more in relationships than anything has been the topic of infidelity, or should I say, cheating. And considering everything that I have discussed regarding cheating, all the things that I learn from the stories that I read on cheating, of which a good chunk of them I don't even discuss them on the podcast, believe it or not, there's actually a lot of insight that I've learned, not necessarily from a statistical study, but just from the stories that I get that are based on cheating. And I know without statistical backing or some sort of scientific research, it's pretty hard to determine a lot of this shit. But when you kind of think about it, a lot of philosophers, when they were busy coming up with some of these nuggets of knowledge that we live by, didn't really have a particularly scientific way of testing it. They came up with some of these theories and they are left to be tested. Which is why I, without having any proper scientific research or statistical testing, came up with these 3 laws, or can I call them theories, in relation to infidelity that are for you to internalize, maybe test, and probably see if it's true or not. As far as statistics and research is concerned in relation to the world of infidelity, the most prominent name in the science of it is a man known as David M. Buss, and the guy has brought up different theories and different understandings on mating and evolutionary psychology and relationships and shit, which have been questioned but have actually seemed quite true after quite a bit of thinking. Now, one of the more prominent ones is the one whereby 75% of men will cheat for sexual variety. And that essentially just means that they will sleep with multiple women, not just one specifically. And that 75% of women will fall in love with a person that they end up having an affair with. So most times they will have a single affair partner, not multiple affair partners. And that has been particularly instrumental when you think about the concept of infidelity when it comes to a lot of women out here. And I'm not gonna lie, this kind of does become some of the basis of which where I derive one of these theories. But with that said, I do have some of my own, and there are 3, kind of like Newton's 3 laws of motion, and I am here to drop these nuggets of wisdom, probably even where they came from, and what it's supposed to explain. So the very first law in Denver's 3 laws of infidelity, which is a particularly simple one, but it hasn't really been claimed by everyone, is, and I quote, cheating is an individual decision, but it is a decision that more often than not is influenced by more than one person. Now, the reason I gave this law and the reason why I believe in it as a law is because a lot of people talk about how infidelity, cheating, stepping out on your partner is a decision that is made by the partner who decides to step out. It is an individual decision. You do it on your own. It's not like you are pushed to do it, blah, blah, blah. But the reality of it is more often than not, people are influenced to engage in infidelity. And you see this whole idea of influence popping up in multiple different places and in multiple different cases, which don't even necessarily relate to infidelity. the whole idea of recommending something to a friend and then they end up trying it out and they bring in more people, like the whole idea of word of mouth is based off of that level of influence. When you look at the idea of, if your wife has a couple of friends and all of them are divorced, there's like I think a 70% chance that your wife is also going to divorce you. Like, those are things that you will hear from time to time, and they do actually carry merit. And the same goes with infidelity. If you have a couple of guys that are all screwing around and they're your man's friend, there's a very good chance that your man might actually step out on you. Does it guarantee that he'll step out on you? No, it doesn't guarantee any of that. But a lot of times, infidelity, cheating, is actually an influenced decision. It's rarely ever individually driven and individually thought up. It is something that is influenced. And with that said, I guess I can move on to our very next law of infidelity, which states, and I quote, "A woman's option of a fair partner directly correlates with the seeming lack of satisfaction in the relationship." Now, this one seems a little bit more complicated, but I believe that women could probably see the sense in it and the guys probably might not. But let me try and explain it to you like this. More often than not, whenever you look at a woman and the person that she's cheating on her partner with, it usually in some way, shape or form correlates with what it is that they may be lacking in that relationship. So for example, if she feels financially uncomfortable or financially insecure, more often than not, she will end up sleeping with a superior in her company or sleeping with someone that makes more money, so that on one end, you could say she is supplementing her income or supplementing for her lack of financial stability, or she just wants the comfort of being with someone that actually has money and, can give her some of that money. If you find that it is a woman that feels emotionally neglected or emotionally dissatisfied, that's when you'll find them sleeping with a close colleague who's a friend, or like a work husband or a work wife or something of that sort. And that's where now you get into the whole territory of bestie chubui. You are seeing this woman who has this male best friend who now starts to bang her, or this man that has this female bestie that starts to bang her, because at that point, they are unsatisfied, and so now they are going to the person that provides that satisfaction in which they lack. Now, is this something that is practiced by men a lot? No, not really. Like, you don't find a guy who is having money issues trying to sleep with a rich woman. You don't normally see that. But in matters emotional, in matters sort of personal, then yes, they can end up sleeping with a close colleague, but it's not something that you hear about as frequently. Most times when guys are doing that, it's because that's the closest person that's giving them the opening to do so, or that is soothing them well enough that the opening kind of presents itself. And with that said, I am going to leave it at that and move on to our third and possibly final law of infidelity under the Denver's 3 laws of infidelity, which this one actually even has a story behind it, but I will explain it a little later. But the law itself says, if your partner, regardless of gender, receives better treatment from society than from you, there is a very high likelihood that you are going to lose your partner to society sooner or later. Or, as some people would like to say, cheating. Although this can also be attributed to divorce and, stuff like that. But essentially, you are going to lose your partner to society. Now, the origin of this law is, in my opinion, a pretty interesting story. So there was this time when I was taking this babe home, and I don't want to give names, I don't want to directly reference people, but there was this time I was taking a babe home, and when we were busy driving, I can't remember what discussion we're having. So at some point, she ends up asking me if I thought that I would be the kind of person that would cheat on my wife after I've super made it and I'm doing super well. I think we're discussing the whole thing where a lot of guys will get to this point where they're making a lot of money and they're much older and they start having these clandestine relationships, or they'll start having a secret family with this young babe, or they start taking up this young babe and they start having an affair with them. And sometimes the wife gets to find out about it, and it's this problematic situation where there's a young babe who's almost like a homewrecker. And she was kind of asking me if I would engage in such, and I was like, honestly, I hope not, but I don't know, because I'm not in their position. I wouldn't know. And we were busy talking about it, and she asked me what I thought causes that. And I didn't have a very concrete answer. I used to think that, it's a guy who just got money and now he has access to all of these women, so he's just going to go into it, and, he has no sexual discipline or some shit. But it kind of bothered me, and I didn't really come to a very conclusive thought about it up until a little later when it actually kind of hit me. When you kind of think about it, like, especially when you look at the older guys right now that are married but have like secret affairs or secret families and shit, you think about it, like when they were starting off, they probably weren't making that much money. Like, they weren't making that much money. And when they got married, when they got together with a partner, they weren't making that much money. But like now when they have this young sugar baby with them, it's like now they're going into this sort of relationship, even though it does put their current family relationship or their relationship with their wife at risk. And you need to have an understanding why. It's not like they're just chasing sex. So that's when I came up with this whole idea of partner versus society validation or valuation. No, actually, attention theory. So partner versus society attention theory. That's the thought that I came up with it. And the underlying thought behind it is when you as a guy are making, say, and I'm using Kenya shillings here because, well, Nairobi and shit. Let's say as a guy, you're making 50K a month. You start dating this babe. This babe, she could be making the same, slightly less, slightly more, will respect you and will treat you like a guy that makes 50K a month. Okay, so let's say you're starting out, you're a pretty young dude, that's how it is. But then you put in the work and at some point you move up to doing 500K a month. Now, that's not something that will take, overnight success or some shit, unless in very, very near improbable cases. So for the most part, it's going to take months, if not years, for you to get from 50 to 500K a month. And by the time you get to 500K a month, a lot of the experiences are getting better. You're being treated nicely, you're being valued a little bit differently here and there. But your partner, because of habit, because you guys have been together for a while, is still going to treat you like a guy that does 50K a month. All right. And that gap of time might not take that long, but you'll still be treated like the guy that does 50K a month. But then now, give it a bunch of years, call it even a decade, sometimes 15, maybe even 20 years. You're at the top of your game or probably senior management, high-ranking business person or some shit. You are doing, originally I was going to go with 50 mil a quarter, but let's even go with 5 mil a quarter. It's still a lot of money. That's about 1.6, maybe 1.65 mil a month, if you think about it. So 5 mil a quarter. You're doing 5 mil a quarter, and you can afford a lot of really, really nice shit. You can afford to live the kind of dream life that most people can only dream of. And at that point, some people are treating you like a small god. Some people are seeking mentorship from you. So they look up to you almost in an idolistic way. You are getting better treatment because now you can go to an expensive restaurant and order a tomahawk steak for like 8,200. And, you're being given like top tier service. You're driving a nice car. You can stay in a nice place. And you're getting like proper top tier treatment. But your partner who's been with you for like 15, 20 years, how are they treating you? Because they've been with you for like 15, 20 years and they've treated you the same, you're still being treated like a guy that's doing 50K a month. And then that raises the problem because society is treating you way better than your partner does. Society could be treating you like you're making a mil or less or even way more because a lot of people don't really know how to fathom making that much money in a month. So they're treating you like the absolute top of the cream. But your partner doesn't treat you like that. So if your treatment at home is worse than your treatment outside of the house, then you're going to value being outside of the house, right? And if you have someone that's almost idolizing you and you seem sexually attracted to them because they're a little bit younger and they have this really nice body and features and pretty face and all, then it's very easy to think to yourself, you know what, I think I can do it with this babe. But now you take it a step further because now you're making around 1.65 mil a month. If you get this babe her own apartment where you guys can go and do the do, so no hotels, no Airbnbs, so there's nothing to track, and you can go and do your thing whenever you want and you give her an allowance, you don't have to spend that much. You get a place in Kilimani for like maybe 100 G's and you give her an allowance plus, pay up and bills and everything. And that comes to probably around 200K. 200K on 1.6 mil is very, very little money. Like on a month by month basis, that's very little money for someone that's doing 1.6 mil. And you can remove taxes plus savings plus disposable income and shit, but you probably wouldn't be going past a mil. So you kind of think about it, it seems like a good compromise for them, where it's like, it's only 200K a month, but I get to be treated like a king by this young, pretty babe that a lot of people would want to be with. And by that point, this babe is being seen probably as a homewrecker or some shit, but this dude sees it as a worthy trade-off. He gets treated better by this babe than by the babe he has at home. Yes, he knows it's because he has money, but he loves the treatment nonetheless, and he has the money to spend. And normally, I'd probably give a counter to this on how you can counteract such a thing, and I will. It's just that I'll promise you that it doesn't guarantee that your partner won't cheat on you. And what I'll say is, if you're with a partner that's doing 50K a month, or that's doing the example of 50K a month, always treat them like they're doing 5 mil a month. Treat them with the absolute respect, give them the highest level of peace and affection and good treatment, and there's a very good chance that when they get to that level, they will always attribute the fact that you stuck with them as opposed to them just fucking around, at least in quite a number of cases. And to kind of conclude all of this, because I usually have conclusions to all of these episodes, this doesn't guarantee that your partner won't cheat on you or your partner will cheat on you. These laws just give a pretty good idea on why it is people are cheating and where it is people are cheating and what's driving people to cheat like that. Although, then again, I could be wrong about everything that I'm saying, considering that this is completely out of thin air, but either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the Breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the Breaktime Podcast. And on X, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.